So before I start, I should let you guys know that this is completely true, as I have no reason to lie. This house is on the border of North Carolina and Virginia, but for the sake of my family's privacy, I won't state exactly where. It's safe to say that I was in the middle of nowhere, with no neighbors, no stores, or paved roads, for 30 miles at the very least. Anyways, on with the story. I had been on a 2-month-long trip to England, taking time off from life. While I was gone, my father had purchased an old farmhouse down in the country as a getaway place. Only a week after I had arrived home, I made plans to go check out the house. About another week later, I realized exactly how far out the house was from everything. It was a bit unnerving, but I brushed it off and made myself enjoy the drive. But from the exact moment I exited my car in the driveway of that house, I felt as if I was being watched. I lugged my bags into the house and started looking around, checking out the rooms and the outside deck. After exploring, I settled in for the night, and nothing happened. Actually, for the first time in 3 days, nothing happened at all. Everything seemed normal, besides the feeling of something watching you constantly. It was on the 4th day, late in the evening, that I would finally find out what was watching me. I had just finished eating dinner and was at my sink, starting to wash my dishes. As I looked out the window, I saw a coyote standing in the tree line about 30 yards away. It was standing on its hind legs, with its right paw against a tree like it was propping itself up. I froze, not really out of fear, but shock. I had no idea what I was seeing. I was never the outdoors type, but I knew coyotes did not do this. I finally snapped out of it and walked out to the patio doors to the deck to get a better look. As I walked outside, I noticed that it had lowered its paw and was now just standing with its nose in the air like it was smelling. Now this is where things get really crazy. All of a sudden, after about 6 seconds of me staring at it, it lowered its head and started running straight towards me. Now, I know this sounds unbelievable, but it's true. Like some sort of cartoon. It was running on its back legs as fast as a coyote would. I was startled, and all I could say, "What the heck are you?" before it started scrambling up the steps, falling in its hurry to get up them. I ran back inside and slammed the patio door shut behind me. Through the long plastic blinds on the door, I could see it. It was standing on all 4 legs, just staring at me, seemingly smiling. I yelled at it and told it to freak off, but it didn't move or change. Its expression stayed the same. I went to the furthest room from the door and tried to forget about it, telling myself anything that would make me feel better. After about an hour, I was calm enough to exit the room, but as soon as I did, I hear it. It was mocking me, over and over in a raspy voice that sounds kind of like a grown man trying to learn English. The words are jumbled at first, but become perfectly clear by the 5th or 6th time I heard it. All I can do is just stand still and try to locate where it's coming from, and I finally do. It's coming from the patio door, the same door it was earlier. I creeped over to the door, and as gently as I could, peeled one of the plastic blinds aside. What I saw changed everything. I was looking towards the ground, expecting to see a talking coyote. Instead, in the dim light shining over from behind me, I saw a man, standing a solid 1.5 feet taller than me, with white skin, covered by what looked to be like deer fur. Its eyes were all white, almost bright enough to shine in the darkness. It stared at me with its head tilted to the side for a few seconds, then yelled, seemingly louder than any noise I've ever heard. It was loud enough to leave my ears ringing. Stunned, I walked backwards towards the kitchen as he slammed his hands against the glass sliding door, hard enough to start sending cracks through the entire door. Seeing this, my flight or fight instinct kicked in. He was between my car and myself, so there was no escape, which meant I was fighting. All I had were some flares from the roadside emergency kit and a fillet knife from the kitchen. Those would have to work. Just as I started to devise a plan, the patio door shattered, the sound of glass falling as all I could hear as I was expecting to see this thing come through the broken door. But, oddly enough, it just stood outside the door, as if some sort of force was keeping it from coming in. I cracked a flare and threw it through the door, attempting to try to ward this thing off. As the flare landed beside it, it broke eye contact with me. I knew that moment was my last hope to charge it with the knife. If I die, at least I'll go without a fight. As I got within a few feet of it, it turned and disappeared behind the flame, burning bright and loud. Through the shine of the moonlight, I could see it walking across the yard towards the tree line. As it walked, it slowed as its human body cracked and morphed into the exact shape of a white-tailed deer. As it vanished into the forest, I felt sick before I could even think what I was looking at. Suddenly I was doubling over, puking and crying my eyes out. After a few minutes I put myself together, grabbed my car keys, my phone, and left without getting any of my bags. It was a 10-hour drive home, and I made it in less than 8. My family was surprised to see me back home, and after I explained everything, they acted like I was crazy. That was until they saw that I didn't have my bags and how it said I was. My father decided that he would wait until morning to go back and I would show him. That night I did not sleep. I could only sit on my bed and scour the internet to find something about what I saw. That's when I stumbled upon reports of skinwalkers in the national forest an hour away from the house. Now, until the second time I encountered this creature, I wasn't sure if I was crazy or not. I've encountered this thing 4 times now, and I plan on sharing those with you guys as well. I went camping with 3 of my buddies, John, Bennett, and Kyle. We do this every year. It's kind of a bro trip to reconnect with each other. We were all fresh out of college and decided to go to our yearly camping trip in August. We are from Oregon and ended up camping in the woods there like we usually do at the same point. The first day was great. We set up our spot, explored the area, and by the time the sun was setting, we set up a campfire and made dinner. After a few too many beers and some s'mores, we decided to go to sleep. It was a perfect way to end the day. Our second day was basically the same thing. Hiking, food, 1 too many beers. But this night, we ended up being not so perfect. I remember watching some videos on YouTube, and we were laughing and it was interesting. As we finished the rest of the beers, we were wrestling around with each other like guys do, and John stopped messing around and froze. Everyone was confused, but John claimed he heard something nearby. I told him it was most likely a squirrel, and he said, no, it was most definitely not. He was scaring me at this point, and I decided to resume the tackling session and I took him down. We forgot about the whole thing until about 10 minutes later. We were tired from wrestling and joking around, so we decided to put the fire out and head into the tent. We had a 6-person tent for anybody wondering, so we were all in one tent. Just as our only light source besides our flashlights went out, I heard a slight cackle. I assume it was one of those boys because we were all clearly a bit buzzed, so everything is fine. I wanted to see what was so funny, so I turned the flashlight directly into Bennett's face. I thought he was the one laughing. Bennett's face was white as a ghost. He looked at me and said, "Did you guys hear that?" I said, "The laughing?" And Kyle said, "That wasn't you." We were all shaken and decided to go into the tent, silent. As we got into the tent, I pulled out an axe that I used to cut the wood. It was the only source of protection we had. I was on the very end of the tent with Kyle and John, and in the middle was Bennett. We were all silent, but I knew we were all wide awake after hearing the laughing. We weren't exactly at an actual campsite, where there were other people around. We just walked into the woods, found an open spot and set up camp here. We were about a mile from our car with barely any cell signal, so I guess you could say we weren't exactly in the safest position if there was a crazy maniac around. I got tired, so I dozed off. I have no idea how long I was sleeping before I heard laughing again. It's hard to describe other than it sounded menacing. It was frozen, and I didn't move. I didn't even try to look over to see if my buddies were awake. The axe was under my pillow. As I mustered enough strength to move to get the axe, I saw what looked like someone's finger pressed up against the tent, circling around the tent. Someone was definitely outside, walking around our tent, laughing. When they got to the front part of where the tent entrance was, they stopped. About 5 seconds went by before the person furiously shook the tent and screamed. That's when I knew my buddies were awake as well, because Kyle screamed like a little girl right after. Whoever was behind the tent laughed and again walked off. We laid there the rest of the night, wide awake and definitely sober. We didn't want to move out of pure fear that whoever was out there was still there. When the sun came up, we packed up everything and walked back to our car. We still go camping every year, but this time we go to legit camping sites. I now bring a judge or a gun with me, and not just an axe. Whoever was outside our campsite could have easily been a deranged homeless person, psychopath serial killer, meth head, or just an asshole playing a prank on us. But I sure as hell won't camp in a rural place anymore. Stay safe out there. It's a dangerous world we live in.